Ahmed Tinubu has pledged to build a more resilient economy, an inclusive society, urging federal and state governments to translate National Economic Council resolutions into measurable outcomes for Nigerians. Speaking at the close of a two-day NEC meeting in Abuja, the president said that President stressed that reforms must move beyond rhetoric to real delivery, jobs created, business supported, infrastructure expanded, and human capital strengthened. The conference brought together governors, ministers, lawmakers, security chiefs, and private sector leaders to align policy priorities across all tiers of government and calling for deeper federal-state collaboration, disciplined execution of the renewed hope agenda. Well, let's look at all of these developments that cropped up at this two-day and very, very important meeting. My guest today is Mr. Gbolahun Olojede. He's a finance expert. He joins me to look at some of the major issues, key issues raised at this very meeting. Thank you so much, Mr. Olojede, and thank God it's Friday. It's good to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be on the program.
Yes. I think we should start critically with what you think about the relationship, the federal government, states, and of course the local governments. And, you know, that was also re-emphasized at this gathering because they need to, you know, complement each other in whatever they are doing. So how does it come to you with the president still re-echoing this, saying that it is important that we work together to be able to achieve inclusive growth, considering the fallout of the reforms?
It's a very important statement. We cannot say it enough. We must continue to say it until we begin to see the results. The reality is that federal government is actually the farthest level of government from the people. A man sits in Abuja and there's an expectation that he knows what is going on in one primary healthcare center that is at my backyard. It's an unrealistic expectation. The real thing is that the government that is closer to the people or the closest must be actively participating in bringing the macro gauge to the micro. If people on the street are going to feel the impact of the major reform activities, the government closest to the people must be involved. That is a critical part of driving an inclusive growth in an economy. Don't forget that this issue of inclusiveness has been elusive for very long. And as we are speaking, in spite of the macro gains in the economy over 2025, 2026 now, most of those things have not been inclusive enough. So we must be deliberate. And one of the ways to be deliberate is to get the other layers of governance to be actively involved in bringing those macro level gains to the level of the people under them.
Indeed. The concerns of the macro is something that really worries me. You know, many will say that we've gotten it right with the macro. That's talking about the businesses. They're all smiling, having a conducive environment to run their businesses. But what about the man on the street? And that is where my next question comes from. FAC, we've seen a bit of hike with regards to that. The last amount shared was about 1.8 trillion naira for a month. And we know what used to be before now. What would you expect, particularly from governors, to support the federal, of course, governors and local government chairmen, to, you know, they are closer to the people and they should be able to, you know, relate with them directly. So what measures or what initiatives, maybe that's the right word, do you think should be instituted at this time for people to start to see the impact of all of this?
Okay. One of the mistake is to think that because more money came into the hands of sub-sovereigns, that therefore it will automatically translate into improvement in the lives of the people. But it doesn't automatically happen. Whatever we seek to be able to achieve in goals and objectives, we must set it out clearly. The performance management environment has been poor. It is, you see, when you have a good performance management environment, the goals, what a state, for example, seek to achieve will be set out. And it will not be set out just in ambiguous descriptions. It has to be set out in ways that it can be measured. So if I take a healthcare, for example, talking about, say, the number of healthcare facilities that will be put in place or the equipping. I may say I want there to be a functional X-ray machine in all the general hospitals in my state. That is a measurable thing. And if you want to do that in 6 months, then we probably can come there in month 3 and say, oh, how many of these 10 hospitals currently has or have an X-ray machine? So the performance management environment must change so that we can measure governance effectively, not just by, oh, I want to build bridges. Most of the projects today that a number of governors put their hands on, they do all these bridges to nowhere because bridges cost a lot. So when they make them, they probably, the cost and the cost also get back into some other wallet, as it were. Or so everybody wants to build an airport, even when there's another airport 15 minutes drive from your state. What do you need that extra airport for? They cannot define it. There are airports that have been built in this country where, maybe apart from the governor and his few friends who use the airport occasionally, nothing is going on. In fact, someone told me of one of the airports where he saw, animals being grazed on the tarmac. So we must define exactly what represents development that will be inclusive for us. And I'll tell you, one of it was the healthcare that I made. You know where most of the people consume their healthcare from. And you make provision to ensure that what you will require to deliver quality healthcare to them are made available at those centers. That is something that is measurable, and it is so with every other thing. This is the number of kilometers of road that I intend to do. It is measurable. This is where I want to do it. We can go back there we can go there in 6 months and ask ourselves. He said he was going to do 20 kilometers of road in XY local government. Where is the 20 kilometers of road? So all this, because see, it is easy to pass on the box. When you have sub-sovereigns that are not performing, the next thing they will say is, put it on Abuja. Some of the revenue that states have access to in Nigeria, some countries in West Africa do not have access to it. And those same countries that earn less in revenue, they have ports, they have roads, they have electricity, they have airport, they have all the things that they're doing within that same revenue that these same Nigerian states are getting, and for which there is not much to show for it.
Interesting stuff. Now, we have shifted focus now. Let's look at our downstream, and we now do more of domestic refining, which of course is helping us one way or the other. But I want to like your views around that, what it means for us, the positives, and also our non-oil sector, which supposed to, everyone expects more revenue. We saw the NRS, former FRS, coming up with beautiful figures and projections for 2026. How does that also come to you?
Domestic refining is a beautiful thing. I recently saw in the news that Dangote has now achieved the maximum capacity of 650,000 barrels per day. Of course, he had also announced in some months past that the intention is to actually scale it to above 1,000 anyway. Here is what will happen with this steady, if we can get our hands steady on this level of production. One, we will conserve our own foreign exchange, and that will help in maintaining the stability of our exchange rate. Because all the money that we will be spending to import refined products, that will reduce dramatically to probably only occasional and strategic importation of that product. So we will save our dollars. Number two, At that level of production by this domestic refiner, we probably can supply the entire West African coast with refined product. If we supply this product to the West African coast, we will earn foreign exchange, which will further bolster our basket of foreign exchange and help us to consolidate on our ability to stabilize our foreign exchange. In fact, it will go beyond just stabilization, because reasonably over the past 18 months, it could be said that we have seen reasonable stabilization. And we have gone beyond stabilization gradually into the realm of appreciation. So if you look at last year, the Naira actually appreciated against the dollar. That is the reality. So if we continue to build our war chest of FX, which domestic refining can help us to do, there is absolutely no doubt that we can continue to strengthen our currency. And we are strengthening the currency on the heels of production, which is what should happen generally. When you produce and you have more to offer the world, you will earn foreign exchange and you'll be able to get your currency to appreciate. Currency appreciation should not be a fiat or a government pronouncement thing. It should be realistic and based on what we are able to produce. And I think we're in the right direction in that sense. As far as the new tax law is concerned, we must also measure along the way. I think it's a fantastic idea. Let me say that first. I also, I understand all the controversies around it. I understand the resistance around it. But at the same time, I know that there is no perfect time for a tax law, because the initial fear people will have is, oh, they're going to make me to pay more. Nobody wants to pay more. So there will definitely be resistance for the tax law. But here is what was observed in January, which supports part of what the government said, or what the drafters of that law said. They said that they have taken into consideration the people at the lowest rung of the ladder in drafting that law. So when I was speaking to my CFO about the impact on the lower end of our own salary grade in the office, they actually got more net pay in January, while the big earners were the ones that had to cough out a little bit more. So that part of it, I think, is a good thing. I think it should bring a little more confidence into the system that government indeed might have thought through the drafting of this law. However, as we go along, January is over. By the time it is March, you will have seen that a lot of companies will have completed their audit. So there will be the issues of corporate income taxation. So we must continue to measure along the way to be sure that the new tax law is delivering on the goals and objectives that we have set out for it. And where there are issues, so that we can quickly realign what those issues are and get back on the path to be able to achieve the vision. One of the problems with last year, for example, we must admit, is the fact that the revenues appear to fall short. Most of the allocations that were meant to go to MDAs, many of them did not receive enough allocations to do what they would have loved to do. Yeah. Despite the fact that on one side, we were saying we were making money, we're making money. And everybody said, okay, if you're making all this money, how come the allocations to the MDAs are falling short? So measure, which goes back to the same thing. Performance management framework must be top-notch to keep us in track with what we're doing.
Now, following our bold reforms that everyone has talked about, even the IMF and World Bank have commended President Bola Tinubu and still advising that we stay the course. The president at that same meeting talked about the National Development Plan 2026 to 2030, which he says will guard the next phase of growth and priorities including mechanized agriculture, dairy and livestock development, climate resilience, and of course private sector driven initiatives. Now again, some analysts like you would say, well, Nigeria is not always short of plans. We always have beautiful plans. We always have plans. But with the understanding of President Bola Tinubu's administration and moving on with this new plan, Renewed Hope Development Plan, what would be your comments with regards to proper implementation of all of these plans?
The government has been bold when it comes to major reform issues. So there's no doubt about that. And some of those major reforms are beginning to also produce results. The stability is there. The stability of the currency, the performance of the stock exchange, and all of that. But you see, there remain in the middle that poor level of inclusiveness. I'll give you an example. I was speaking to a friend recently who had always talked about, he lives abroad, and he invests in the U.S. Stock market. Young man, there is value in the Nigerian stock market. So recently we were talking, and I asked him, so S&P 500 last year, what did S&P 500 do? I think about 17-point-something% in 2025. What did NGX, the Nigerian boss, do? 51%. So while you're looking at, 2023 was very tumultuous, there was exchange rate volatility, he wasn't paying attention to the fact that the volatility of that season has given way to a reasonable stability of the foreign exchange. And that the companies that were making losses in the 2023-2024 first half have come back into profitability and have even started to declare dividends. And that therefore the performance is beautiful. So, but when you now ask yourself, how many Nigerians are actually investing on the Nigerian stock exchange? Maybe it is 5% of the people, or maybe even less. So even though the NGX has done 51%, the gains, the people who benefited from that 51% is not inclusive enough, because we need more people to get in on all those things. So the biggest job, in my opinion, that the government has to do in line with all these plans is that we must be able to cascade the gains of those plans all the way to the bottom rung of the ladder and be deliberate about driving inclusiveness. When we do that, this disconnect between what government is saying and what the streets are saying will mildly, it will even out, and everybody can be on the same page and be a beneficiary of the macro gains that the economy is turning out. That will be my comment on that. And we can drive this with performance management as well. So federal government can set out the specific things it seeks to achieve with all these resilience, private sector participation. Those are there's a word they call it in balanced scorecard. Those are wizzy words. We have to make that and translate them into things that are measurable, so that as the year runs by, we can pause and say, let's measure how much of all these things that we set out to do we have done. Then we measure. If we're not up to task, to where we should be, then we up our game, or we realign anything that is going out of line. We realign it back and move on. Without that, all those things will remain in the space of talking, and enough might not be done in the space of doing.
I think it's a good way to live it. I must thank you so very much for talking to us. I've been speaking to Mr. Bola Oloje, the finance expert. Interesting conversation as always. Do have a great weekend.